Alright, so this is how far back I have a record of speaking with Claire on this phone alone. There's also a lot to this. This is just between me and Claire Jordan, and there's a lot of it. Um, Obviously, going through these is not easy. I did show her messages from people who were harassing me and threatening me. Obviously, there's a picture of what was done to my vehicle with the windows smashed out and all that. It wasn't running by the time they smashed out my windows anyway, and I couldn't afford to fix it because of all the expenses that I was having to go through, jumping through all these hoops and traveling to all these different agencies I was told to go to. So we know that I've known Claire since at least, what did it say there, July 7th of 2023? I've known her longer than that. Oh, come on now. Anyway, going back all the way back to the beginning with Claire, she was going to help me to turn this stuff in. She was going to look at the evidence and help me turn it in. And I was going to look at her evidence and help her turn it in. Um, Here we are years later. Most of the time, if she answers her phone when I call, it'll be a situation where, well, like for example, when I was in jail, she'd talk to me about once every 3 months or so. Um, Outside of here, she usually doesn't actually answer my calls or call me back. Usually, she doesn't have her answering machine on, it's full. So, I make do with what I got. And we're about to start this year recording. I know we're 3 minutes into it, and of course, a lot of people will assume that since we're 2 minutes into it and I haven't started playing the recordings, that it means I'm not going to. Well, I guess I'll play the first one now. Like I said, this is years of her not keeping her word, not following through, but she promised, and this one day is the day she was going to keep her promise. And you'll get to tell I told the truth in my last video. So we'll start off with this one. And I have to go through them all. I still haven't labeled them at all. It takes a while to do it because I got to listen through them. Alright, it's time for my appointment with Claire. Hello, it's 9:02 my time, so I started dialing a minute late.
No, it's okay. We have the flu over here, so we're not feeling so great, but, the phone makes that possible. So, let's do it.
Yes, ma'am. Whew. Well, I was gonna get a list of phone numbers. I do have a short list to start with, but I know we were gonna try to review stuff before we got started. Were you able to check your emails?
No, I passed out. Like, we had such bad fevers last night, but again, the beauty of phone calls is, like, I'm not going to pass on germs, but I don't feel very good. But I will do my best for you, and I told you I'd be here, and so I am.
Yes, ma'am.
I've had to help others when friggin' vomiting at times, so I totally get it. It sucks.
Now, if you guys have listened to Claire in the past on my channel, it's obvious she's slurring a bit. Now, that might be due to illness.
Oh yeah, no. My kids were like, check my temperature, and I, touch their forehead, and I'm like, you feel a little warm, and they're like, Mom, your hands feel really hot right now. Like, oh my god, I'm I'm almost delirious, but I can pull it together. I can pull it together. I said I'd do this for you, and so I will.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I was gonna review that with you, but if you haven't been able to read it yet, I should probably.
One thing you guys might want to do is a drinking game, whether it be sarsaparilla or whatever it is you choose to drink. Every time she says that she said that she would be here, so here she is, or any variant of that, go ahead and take a chug of your bubbly.
Give you like half an hour or so to read it, and then call you in like 30 minutes if that sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Call you then. Bye. Life happens.
You guys got to see me scroll over it a little bit. There's a crap ton with her. That one was only a couple of minutes long. I gave her the half an hour. Most of the evidence that I sent her, you could actually read it directly on the screen. There was just a few of them that you had to kind of zoom in a little bit to be able to read them. But let's see. Open with Windows Media Player because the regular media player doesn't work.
Hello?
Hey, I'm trying to read it, but I'm not going to your camera. That's not your fault. That's tech.
Yes, ma'am. I had to click on the picture and then zoom in order to read it.
Yeah, and so, but what I can see is your percentiles, which is 95, 98, and 99, and so I get it.
Yeah, they're really high across most of it. There's part of it where it was low, but like I hadn't slept in 2 days.
Oh yeah, no, that's like when I got evaluated. I was like, no meds, no sleep. Let's see what the lowest of the low is, and I still came out at 99%. So yeah, all right.
Yep. So part of it, there was a part of it where she wasn't able to restart it when she.
I'm going to stop it right here just to say that this entire thing devolves entirely into comparisons. When you are helping a victim, never compare themselves to you. You might think it in your head, but certainly don't say it out loud. They're not in your shoes, they're not in your position, they're not living your life, and they're not trying to turn in your abuse. They're trying to turn in theirs. You need to focus on what the victim has to say instead of doing the whole comparison thing. A lot of mandatory reporters wanted to interrupt me, like a lot of women especially. I'll give you one for example that was in Wyoming. So when I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, they had a replacement lady one of those days that I was supposed to go in. And the replacement lady that they had speak with me, I was trying to explain to her the situation of abuse and being separated from my loved ones. So she tried claiming that she was separated from her loved ones. And I, at that point, tried to explain several other situations, you know, circumstances about my situation that are important. And basically, she tried to play it off like her going to college and getting paid is the same as being prevented from being able to go back and actually see her family if she chooses. It's not the same. You know, there's a difference between moving from France to Spain because you found a beautiful house there and you like the area, and being exiled from France to Spain, where basically you ain't got jack. Let's press play on this. And this one's about an hour long, and I want to say she says a variant of that about 30 times in this, so you might be getting very, very, very root beer headed.
Start it, you have to go with it. And it just so happened that right at that time, one of the detectives came in and used the door, or used the room next door, and he was really loud talking to whoever he was talking to, and it was a memory thing where I had to remember something about this really long paragraph that she read, and I'm like, I can't do both of these at the same time.
Right there, you see, I'm trying to explain something, and you can hear her in the background talking over the whole thing. She's not hearing me. When you're busy talking, you don't hear what the other person is saying. You can't hear what the other person is saying. You're busy talking. Your mind is busy making your mouth run. It's also busy with your thoughts, and then it's also busy with the connection in between your thoughts and your running mouth. When somebody starts talking and you've already assumed that you know what they're going to say and you start talking over them, you can hear that right there she talked over, the full last minute. And she does this no matter what. This is something that's irreparable with her. If she wants to say it, she is going to OCD it out of her mouth. And it's really complicated trying to get help from somebody like that because everything is a comparison. And you're going to get to hear that in this as well.
Whatever, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. But I see your testing scores, and it says that as far as visual memory and all that thing, you're above average. Especially, what was it, visual?
Yep, my visual memory, and also a lot of the audio stuff I was really good at. It's just we did that at the very end. Um, my memory is wonderful. My ability to remember the words was also really high up there too. It was at like 96%. But the thing is that that one is from Leslie Carter, and she is an autism advocate, and it states outright that I am autistic. It also states outright that I'm not schizophrenic, that I'm not delusional. Um, it states outright that the Natalie.
Now, this is all stuff that's in the evidence that I sent her already, and she can read it, unless she's that blurry eyed, that weary eyed, or that drunk. And, if you got the flu and you take some medications, it might get you basically drunk.
Bollinger situation is very real. So, I mean, it's not just the verifications, it's also the fact of these officers, how did they supposedly not know that this stuff was going on, especially when, like, I just sent you evidence that they knew this was going on all the way back in 2022. I also sent you the evidence from Deputy Taylor, which is what resulted in, instead of them calling me delusional at my psych evaluations, they didn't call me delusional because Deputy Taylor verified it was the truth. The problem now is that TFCC is still trying to continue to push that delusion thing, and obviously I tried to turn in abuse, and they pretended that the abuse were delusions.
So I'm pausing here. You guys have gotten to see that the Natalie Bollinger situation is real. You've also gotten to see that the assaults are real, that the threats against my life and my friends and family's lives are absolutely real. We don't just have them in texting, they're also in Facebook Messenger, and they're also in recorded phone calls and recorded videos.
So I've been abused this whole time and unable to turn in my predators without retaliation because as soon as they realized it wasn't a delusion, they started trying to cover it up. So
they get scared. They get really scared, like in my situation, but your situation is just as bad.
Well, as soon as they start saying mentally ill, you literally have to have a...
Now, one of the things is when you're listening to a victim, you need to at least once sit down and let them tell their story from start to finish without interruption. Literally nobody has done that. Not one person has actually done that. So with every interruption that she gives, and I've given her the speech about interrupting many times, I've also been the example for her of what it's like to actually listen.
Friend or family member calling the crimes and say this is happening. He does not have a history of making stuff up or having hallucinations or delusions. You know, this is a situation where if he does something out of desperation, there's a very real world reason for it. It's not some alien spacecraft come down to insert a unicorn horn up my rectum.
Spacecraft and flat Earth and bullshit like that. You know?
Well, one of the things with you,
throwing a rock at you.
They've done a lot of that,
Like,
and there's
you get
a lot
to
of
hear a
videos
lot of
of
these
that.
interruptions. One of the things about these interruptions is that they always come at the same exact points in the story, and it's always pretty much the same thing that she's saying. We don't need you to finish our sentences. Don't try to read my mind. You're not going to be able to. You don't have that ability. Nobody does. So it's best to listen to the end of someone's sentence instead of trying to finish it for them. That's another situation where you're interrupting somebody, and when they're in a situation where it's an overwhelming situation and they have to try to sort through a lot of details and remember, when you ask them a question, they have to sort through a lot of memories. It's not just one or two memories in a situation like this. There's a lot. And to get the information that they want or answer the question that they want at a moment's notice, if you only have one predator, that's easy. If you got 50 predators, well, you're going to have to try to remember which of the Johns or which one of the Edwards it was that pulled this trap on you. I pulled those names out of my backside, obviously.
And you've gotten to see some of the videos of the assaults and stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons to have you make the calls with me is because you can explain to them that this is a very, very real risk. My life is at risk. My friends and family's lives are at risk. And they need to coordinate to have somebody meet with me in person who is not a local police officer. They also have to understand that the safety issues with the local police is not my fault, not my choice, and not my decision. And the fact that they've arrested me twice for calling 911 about abuse and trying to turn in the police officers themselves who refuse to do their job and keep treating me like I'm schizophrenic and delusional, like it's not okay. First they blow me off claiming that I'm mentally ill, and then later on they say, oh, well, we don't have to do our jobs for you because you're cognitive. Like, no, that's not how it works. A disabled person, regardless of their disability, if you want to tell me you can only do it if they can't speak, you're breaking the law. And that's what I had to deal with Sean. I didn't send you any of those.
I noticed there all she had to say is no, and that made me have a bit more anxiety. It made me increase my voice just a little bit and increase the tempo just a little bit, hoping to get just a few more details in before she interrupts me again and derails the train. The more she derails the train, so to speak, the easier it is to derail it again. So if she interrupts me 100 times, I have to stop myself from speaking 100 miles an hour. And when she says the same thing over and over again at the same part of the story, again, like I'm showing you guys the example now, It's annoying when I go on repeat, isn't it? But it's not just annoying, it's distracting, and also you have to stop what it is that you were saying and back it up a bit and take your frame of mind out of what it is that you needed to be focused on, and then you have to explain to the person that what they're doing is not helpful and not useful.
Audio files yet, because I know you're not going to have time to listen to them. But, you know, I do want to send them to you so that you have access to them at a later date.
Okay.
Also, if you go under your in your inbox and you click at the search bar on it to search what's in your inbox, if you just one of the options it says from, and you can just click that down and write my name, and it'll bring up all of the emails that I sent you, so you don't have to scroll through them all.
Okay.
I had to do that to look up Natalie's emails. I did send her or forward her email.
The reason I told her that is because she told me that she had to scroll for a really long time through her emails to try to find the ones from me. So I was letting her know how she could find them easier.
To you again. That way you can reread it or, you know, have access to
it was hard to go through, yeah, but yeah.
Like that right there is what I exposed Natalie's dad with. And it literally took over a year of me being abused and treated like a child molester and a rapist before. It took me 6 months to even curse, if that tells you anything. Like,
well, no, it does, because, like, how many times have you talked to me, and you're like, Miss Claire, and you're always polite, and then when you finally dropped, like, a cuss word, I was like, excuse me, sorry. I just say
when I was in high school, like, in chapel, none of them had heard me curse for, like, 2 years.
Now here you can see we're off course. The train is derailed. If you let me say what I need to say, at the very beginning, it's a pretty simple story. This all could have been dealt with very easily. After Natalie and her sister had screwed up and pretended that I stalked them, and it resulted in me being assaulted and having people threatening my life, well, somebody could have shown me how to record those situations. Not that anybody was going to let me pull out my camera and record. I tried, I got it slapped out of my hand. But when people were threatening me over the internet, if somebody would have showed me how to take screenshots, Natalie would have known that I was telling the truth about what people were saying and what they were doing. And I believe she would have put a stop to it. But I didn't get that chance. I didn't get that opportunity.
And then the day that I did curse, it was because one of the kids was making fun of a guy who got his head cut off by a excavator.
holy shit.
Yeah, and the kid thought it was funny, so I said, that's fucked. And
anyway, we're off topic here, and I'm sorry we're off topic here. We're going to have to play through that because when we get to the parts where it's important, I'd like to be able to hear it, you know.
And I got kicked out of class for that. My teacher talked to me later on, Mr. E, he's like, you know, I didn't think that you had it in you to even use language like that. Well, everybody's got a point, and that wasn't funny. So I guess one of the things we should do is get both of our minds up for the whole morning routine, because if we get talking, get our blood flowing, and get our minds on thinking, that helps. One of the things.
Now, what we were going to do is spend an hour on going through the evidence before making calls. That was the plan the whole week, over a week. What we were going to do, the whole plan was we were going to spend a full 8 hours on Thursday. We were going to spend the first hour going over the evidence so that it's fresh in our minds. You know, obviously looking at it, listening to the stuff, you know, so that the important stuff is actually in our heads when we make the calls, and we're in this headspace to make the calls as well, you know. And it didn't get to happen, and with some of this stuff, I, it needs to be turned in. When you repeatedly interrupt me and it takes me off course, just the fact that I have a person listening to me helps to calm me down so that I can speak more clearly. But then when they're not listening to me, it's completely different. Or when they seem like they're listening to me, but then they don't remember anything.
Things I used to do is sit down and do simple math problems. 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 3 is 11, shit like that.
Okay.
But one of the things with if you're able to look at that stuff is that you'll know exactly what to say and where to speak up.
It's there. I did eventually bring him back on course. I try to keep the course. Obviously, you can tell there are parts where she's interrupting me, and that's what ends up happening. You have to listen intently instead of making story comparisons or interrupting to make a comment that doesn't need to be made. Because right there, what I'm going from is thinking about the situation that I need to tell you about. And then I have to stop thinking that in order to think, why did she ask that question? Or, I could answer that, but in order to answer it honestly, I have to wait till later on in the story when the situation happened. Otherwise, it's going to get taken out of context. So then I have to think about how it's going to be interpreted if we fuck up the timeline. You see where the issue is.
The very first stuff that I sent you yesterday, I did send you the verifications, multiple verifications saying and stating that I'm not delusional and that the Natalie Bollinger thing is very real. I also sent you 3 dismissal notices. You remember I told you I was in prison in Nebraska?
Yeah.
So they charged me with improper use of 911. Same thing there as here. And they held me on 3 different charges. One of the guys was a pedophile who was threatening my life and had assaulted me and broken my telephone. And when I tried to turn him in, I was also trying to turn in Sheriff Scott DaCosta and his receptionist, whose name is Leslie Snell. Her and her husband had already...
The reason I'm bringing this up, and it is important, is because not only do I have the evidence of it, but it's also a situation that's used against me everywhere I go. When you guys tell me to forget about it, it's in the past. Well, no, it's not. What these predators with badges did was create a situation, because I tried to turn them in, where I didn't have access to the evidence, where they were allowed to slander my name and pretend that all of the evidence are delusions. Trying to get Claire to look at the evidence, well, there's always some reason that she can't. Always some reason that it didn't work. And I can show you all of the messages that I sent to her. There's a bunch of them that she did get. It seems that, in my opinion, what's more likely happening is depression. There's the part where being a parent gets you overwhelmed, but there's also the part where depression will shut you down.
already been implicated in death threats against me by her husband's brother, actually. I got that recorded. It's pretty cool.
Okay, hang on. I have kids that are homesick today, so...
Yes, ma'am.
No, you gotta go inside, okay? Yes, you can have more cereal. I'll get you more in just a minute. Okay.
Well, when they had me in prison for 7 months, it was on misdemeanors. They were trying to claim that I was stalking the pedophile who was stalking me. And then they also had one of them from Sheriff Scott DaCosta and one of them from a former friend of mine who was a Denver police officer. He was fired because he was not a good police officer. And so the three of them worked together to get criminal charges against me. And then while I was locked up, then Leslie Snell did the civil thing. I wasn't allowed to go to my civil court because I was locked up. And then they repeatedly had court without me. All they were interested in was trying to get a state doctor to call me schizophrenic or delusional based on what they had to say instead of actual evidence. In all of these situations, the Natalie Bollinger thing, obviously the abuse is real. Obviously the Natalie thing is real. The evidence of the abuse connecting these people with their assaults over the Natalie Bollinger situation is obviously very real. And the thing is, it's not that they didn't know, it's they were trying to cover it up by pretending that it wasn't real in court. And then anybody that I try to tell is like, oh, well, there's no way they can do that. Like Deputy Taylor, for example.
Oh, yeah, that's like me yesterday, Like, did you hear what I just heard from my kid? Why haven't they picked him up yet? I don't know.
Yup.
It's not my job. I don't know.
Well, at least they got started on yours. One thing I was going to ask is...
So, the stuff that I'm telling her, these are important details. It's the details of what abuse happened and why I'm having to continue taking abuse. Why it is that I need a friend or family member to go in with me. And of course, when she interrupted me there again to tell her own story, it, of course, takes us back a step and we have to try again, right?
Are there any mandatory reporters in the state of Colorado that we can call about my situation?
Yeah, I could give you my detective's name.
I'll write
and that
it down.
would help you and me at the same time.
Well,
actually,
he's a Boulder detective. He very well might be somebody I know.
Jesse Innes.
I doubt it, but it's possible. I'd have to see his face, so I'll look it up.
Yeah, no, he seems like he's new. But he really has, it sounds like he has good intentions. But,
a lot of them sound like that. And, once in a while you do find somebody with good intentions, but you have to fit the criteria. Usually an underage girl is the criteria.
Here's something that everybody should understand by this point. That whole "you catch more flies with honey" saying, well, that is, or seems to be, what convicts live by as a motto. So if somebody is trying to rip you off or take advantage of you, they're very likely to be sweet with you about it, especially if you're in public. And then they'll be sweet about it until they can convince you that it's okay, you can let your guard down and be alone with them. And then you realize that the reality is you're completely alone because that person isn't with you. They have ulterior motives.
And that's the baseline criteria. So,
which is why I went through the shit that I went through yesterday. Pardon my language.
Yes, ma'am. And you get to see that when it's somebody like that, they actually do something. They're just slower than molasses if you're poor.
Oh, yeah, or absolutely. Slower than molasses is an understatement. And, I have a fever today and the kids are homesick, but I'm going to do my best, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
That's your second drink.
I figured we'd, like I said yesterday, take the first hour for basically getting oriented and then start making phone calls. I'm going to pull out some of the paperwork. I'd planned on reviewing it with you, but, with you having the flu, it's something that if you go into the picture, you can actually zoom in and you'll actually be able to read it. It's just, obviously, I'm not working with professional equipment here. I'm a hobo, and that's one of the situations of circumstance. I've been forced into these circumstances. In every single case where I've actually broken the law, it's a situation where I was forced to out of duress and out of coercion. And I was going to send you some stuff on that again because I know I sent you the paperwork on it at least once before on what coercion is and on what duress is. But like that's the situation with them ignoring my disabilities and then trying to have me re-diagnosed. That's a felony in every single state. And they did that in Colorado repeatedly.
And they did that to me in Oregon. So
yep, and they've done it to me in Oregon as well. So one of the places I was going to try to contact is...
Now there is a small comparison. It's not a super long story. It is enough to derail the train, but I was focusing real hard on trying to stay with it, and she wasn't being too horrible about it. I mean, you can tell she's trying. Whether or not she's going to retain any of it, though, is the question.
Some of the media outlets, we might have to call them and then retry it again when you're feeling better, because I know, when you're sick, it clouds the mind quite a bit.
For how many times people have given you excuses like, oh, my kids are sick, oh, I'm sick, I can't do it today. I made you a promise, so I'm here today.
Well, I know that your situation is real. You also haven't been telling me that you have cancer but still haven't fucking died.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that makes a difference.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I do have the flu. My kids.
And by the way, that was your third drink. Or is that the fourth one? I think that's the third.
They're like, check my temperature, and they're like, Mom, your hands are really hot. And I'm like, okay, well, I still gotta do shit tomorrow, so.
Well, a lot of people, when they offered to help me, it turned out that they wanted me to do something first, and I'd do what they wanted immediately. I know how important it is to do it immediately, and I had hoped that by being the example that they would understand. But I'd already been that example for years. Most of the time, victims don't want to try it in.
Sean, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but I am very sick today, but I'm here for you. Not for me, for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Take another drink.
Well, the reason that I'm bringing this up
is years ago, and I've had so many things that have popped up in my own life that, it's time for me to speak up for you, and I might not be in the best
Take another drink.
Situation right now, but I promised you today, so we're doing it today.
Yes, ma'am. And what I was trying to explain to you is like the details are important, and I was trying to tell you important details about the help that I've been getting. Not because I'm downing on you, because almost every time I try to bring that up, because it's a really, really important part of it, it's a situation where you interrupt, and the things that you say make me feel as if you feel it's directed towards you, and it's not. Everybody does it, and that's one of the things about when I'm trying to tell you this is.
When I say everybody does it, it's because not everybody's trained as a mandatory reporter or in crisis intervention. Most people don't know how to be supportive in a lot of these situations. So it's something that I just have to accept, obviously. It's something that I have to work with and try to educate people as they're willing to be educated. The thing is, I don't think that people should have to be educated in order to try to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. It's just a matter of thinking to yourself, well, how would it feel if that happened to me?
It's an ongoing issue. This isn't me being passive-aggressive, bitching at you. This is me just stating a fact. And it's a fact that the police want to ignore. It's a fact that the people at all of these mental health places want to ignore. It's the fact that these...
And see, at this point, even though it is something that she's continually doing through this, it's also something that I'm not trying to explain to her that it's her in specific, and you got to hear her admit that it had been years. Well, we're only 16 minutes and 15 seconds into this video, and we're already 40 minutes into the recording that I'm making for YouTube on it. So there's a lot of me speaking in here, a whole lot of me speaking.
People who I'm supposed to depend on from the government are telling me to go to my friends and family. My friends and family are telling me to go to the government. I'm told to turn it in right away. I turn it in right away. I'm sent in circles and then treated like I didn't turn it in right away. I'm told I need to call 911, but then in court they want to claim that all of my 911 calls were just delusions. Meanwhile, there's recordings of the assaults against me, and that is the part that's the most important. Is
phone
that
calls to me while it was happening, or live streams while it was happening.
Yep.
And she got to see some of those too, by the way. The problem is that here we are years later, I'm still having to take the abuse from many of the same people. And many of these people grew up here in Tillamook, were raised here. They got lots of friends here.
Well, there's also the fact that so many people did watch it, especially mandatory reporters. And a lot of these people were slandering my name in these Natalie Bollinger websites, which resulted in people wanting to harm me just because somebody says that they work with some department in Colorado and they were at court. And I'm like, well, if you were at court, why didn't you tell the truth about what happened in court? Because one of those court dates, I went down there to turn in the officers in Natalie Bollinger's case and the abuse that I was enduring, and also turn in the Bollinger family and their extended friends and family who were literally going out of their way to destroy my life, destroy my evidence, trying to coerce or intimidate others, trying to talk others into doing harmful things to me, destroying a lot, preventing me from being able to have access to my disability money. And then, of course, if I react to this even in the least bit and try to turn it in, they pretended I was schizophrenic because it was literally the officers that I went to before Natalie was killed. Now, because
And you might be able to tell I'm a lot more excited by this point in the video. I'm talking a lot faster. My voice is a little bit higher pitched and a little bit more strained, I guess. But it's also a little bit louder. And that's something that's an autistic trait. Many of these things are autistic traits. Now, I'm not calling Claire Jordan evil. That's not the situation here. And of course, when I speak up about, not being able to see most of this stuff, I just have to believe her. Well, that's actually part of the training. You believe the victim. Listen to the victim intently and believe them. And she didn't have anybody here to believe her. But also, the stuff that she showed me and the way that she acts leads me to believe that she is neither schizophrenic nor delusional. And of course, you guys got to hear the angry part at the end of the video. And you guys haven't made the connection yet that those angry videos and those angry parts of the videos and things like that are just giving you examples. Claire is aware that when I am angry like that on video, it's not a matter of actually being angry. Here, this is different. This is autistic communication at its not so finest. The recording here between me and Claire. And that's a completely different situation than having an angry moment on my channel when I'm making one of the angry videos. In the angry videos, I'm usually repeating what it is that I'm being told. And Claire is very well aware of that. I do try to explain to at least one person about my situation, about what's happened in the last 24 to 48 hours, just so that at least one person is aware, even if I just have to text it.
Natalie was killed, and it's directly over the situation with them ignoring the abuse by Natalie and her friends and family towards me, and I had to expose her dad. That's literally what I had to do. I had to expose her dad with that email that I sent you. And that's what prompted her to eventually get a protection order. But the thing is, I didn't even know how that worked. I was pissed off because they were giving me a protection order and I hadn't even been allowed a court date. I also wasn't told anything more about it. What I was told was that the government was closed until after the first of the year. But apparently there was a court date I could have gone to on the 22nd and shown my evidence. But another issue with that is that, first of all, I didn't get paid my disability until the 23rd, which is the day after that. Second of all, I didn't know that I had a court date. Third of all, all of my evidence that was on those computers, I had no way to be able to do any of the stuff that I'm able to do now. And even now, I'm not able to turn any of that stuff in because they ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist or tell me that they can't see it. And there's also the list of officers that I've gone to that have later on gone to prison, jail and or prison, for doing the things to others that they had done to me. But still, the media wants to ignore it, and everybody, all through this, when they say they're going to help turn it in, they never do. When they want to turn it in, they claim they did it by themselves, which I've already said to you a bunch, so you've heard it a bunch, and I'm sure it's gotten annoying by now. But then those people never come forward in court, and my court paperwork from that, it shows that what they said in court versus the reality of the situation and the reality of the recordings that I have with my friends and family over the situation shows that these officers intentionally lied. And then many of the people who claimed that they were going to help me, I eventually had to post shit up on the internet because they were just dragging it out. They were wasting my time.
And you see, I'm also having communication issues because of this. It's not just me speaking faster, it's also me having. Let me explain autism like this. Okay, high functioning autism. Most people have basically one train of thought. So if you can imagine one choo choo train going around in your head, right? And then imagine that you've only got one tunnel. That would be your mouth. So when you're thinking of something and you're speaking about it, it's usually one train of thought going on. But for somebody who is high functioning autistic, they may have, multiple trains, but they still only have one mouth. And that becomes an issue because they're remembering multiple things at one time. And they're still having to try to communicate regularly.
Intentionally misleading me. There were, people who had a history of abusing me in my life, and I had to rely on those people, my own abusers. I had to rely on those people for help. Meanwhile, Natalie's Bollinger's family was getting a hold of me because I'm disabled. All of this stuff should have been monitored. Nobody monitored it. By the time I was able to learn how to record this stuff, people were pissed off that I was recording it, and they were pissed off that I was posting it. But the fact is, it's the truth. I'm being.
Now, if you guys have been paying attention, we should be, I believe, up to 6 drinks now. And she's done a really good job of listening here for a while. We're going to find out later on that she didn't retain the information. Now, that's obviously not something that's my fault. It's also not something that's necessarily her fault. Because if you remember at the very beginning of this, when we listened to her video, she was saying she was pretty close to delirious. So it's a situation where she has a valid reason and or excuse. If it's an excuse, I wouldn't consider an excuse actually valid. But it's one or the other, and it could very well be a true story, and chances are it probably is. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. If there's stuff that they lie about, a lot of times I can let it go because it's not that major. Sometimes it becomes a major habit for them, and that's a different story.
Harmed because people who were supposedly my friends and family didn't want to come forward and tell the truth, and the people who were supposed to be professionals and mandated reporters, they definitely didn't want to come forward and tell the truth because Natalie was dead and they could end up in prison. So the thing is that that's resulted in a situation where my life is absolutely at risk. You've verified more than once that you think my life is at risk.
Yeah.
But the thing is, telling me is not the same as telling it to the mandatory reporters. So, you know, that's something that
She's listening real well.
let's see, it's 9:28, so we got about 30 minutes to try to cover as much as possible before we start. But I'm going to pull out one of the documents because it's got 3 different numbers and places to get a hold of. But if you don't tell them, you know, that my life is at risk and that this harm is very real, and also tell them that the Natalie Bollinger thing is very real, there's a very good possibility that it'll just be completely ignored. Also, there's the need to...
A disabled person needs to have someone else turn it in either for them or with them. And with them is more important when you don't know all the details or when you can't retain all the details. A lot of these people have memory issues, and much of those memory issues come from PTSD. Their predators are still loose.
Call TFCC at some point and try to turn this into TFCC, as I've been instructed to do again, despite the fact that I'm being blackballed by TFCC and they haven't investigated.
So at this point, I'm letting her know the places that we're going to be calling. I would have let her know earlier, but that's one of the things with her having to take a look at stuff and giving her half an hour for that. And then it gets to the point where we've eaten so much time that, you know, people need to eat. So I tried to do stuff over the lunch hour while she was eating.
Themselves yet. They're trying to ignore all of the psychological evaluations and go along with the rubber stamping that they did for the police department. Basically, since I first started trying to turn in the police department, they've started pretending that I'm delusional. And that's
or the thing where they try to get you to sign a document saying that, you know, you need to go to NA meetings, and you're like, I've never done those drugs in my entire life.
So this part is her going off on it's a recurring theme here in Tillamook, a recurring subject. They don't actually help us. They just want to get the money from having you fill out paperwork. See, Donald Trump isn't the first president, and Tina Kotex is not the first governor to pull this crap, so to speak. I mean, it's a situation where the homeless money isn't really going to the homeless. Or the money to help drug addicts is the money that they're interested in getting, because that's in addition to their regular services. That brings in more money. And if they're never cured, it means they're coming back every week for another appointment. And stuck out on the streets, they're still drug addicts. And what about the ones that aren't drug addicts? Should they have to do drugs in order to gain access to these places? They got a needle exchange here. If you take one dirty needle into them, they'll give you a $20 Fred Meyer's card. Well, I never take many needles because when I find a needle, I want to dispose of it so that no little kids get it. I'm not going to carry it around with me. And I don't use them, so I mean...
Right, and then they tell me, oh, well, it's not just for drugs, you know, there's all sorts of addictions. And it's not like, you know,
but you can
we're
see we're off
singling you
topic
out.
again.
Everybody who comes here has to do that. And I'm like, and you tell us that it's a homeless shelter.
Don't. No, they do not. I have read the paperwork.
Well,
I read the paperwork too. You don't have to sign the piece of paper, but you do have to go to the meetings. You have to go to 4 meetings per week to go to Helping Hands. 4 NA or AA meetings every single week. That means 16 of them per month to stay out there. When she was there, it's different from when I was out there They changed it around a little bit, and they've changed it around a little bit since then, too, as I've been told. But we're off topic, and we got to try to get back on topic, but she's going to make that kind of difficult. If I interrupt too much, then it'll become a situation where, well, you get to hear it.
Work that they gave me absolutely said that I had to go 4 days every week.
The paperwork they gave me said that I was allowed to stay 3 days in a row, and then I'd have to take a day off and then come back in, and I had to sign in.
Meanwhile, none of this at this point matters. None of this matters. These are all stories that I've gotten to hear in some capacity or another at least half a dozen times. At this point, the important part of the subject that we need to stay on topic with, a lot of the generalizations that I'm saying to her, if she looks at the evidence that I sent her, the evidence actually has the names of those people in it. It has a lot of the important details. It's not just the generalization, it's the proof of the situations themselves. And getting her to look at any of that evidence, instead of looking at it, she instead starts talking about how she knows that these things happen because they happen to her. That's not the same. You should know those things happen to me because you saw a video of those things happening to me or read the messages of those things happening to me. The A&E Murder on the 21st thing, she watched that. It took her a while, and we do speak about that in this.
On the little sheet and say that I was homeless outreach. And I did that every fucking time.
Well, they made it a little bit different between you being there and me being there, but the doors being open, people having access to your stuff, and those people still being active drug users, despite the fact that they're supposed to be sober while staying. It's a situation where they're favoring drug addicts because that's where the money comes in. It's kind of like,
yeah.
I had to.
Meanwhile, at this point, this is all off topic. This is very specifically off topic because it's where she took it. So at this point, I have to try to fight to get back on topic, but I also have to try to be as appeasing as I can in the situation.
Go in yesterday and fill out another intake form at CARE, and even filling out that intake form, like, that's how they get their money. They get money from the government. That's part of what makes them mandatory reporters and makes it so they haven't turned it in right away, and they haven't. So one of the things is, when I make those calls, I don't have anybody. What I needed is one person. Like, most disabled people have a mother or a brother or a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or somebody who's involved in their life to make sure that they're not victimized. But the thing is, without that person, that's gonna help me to do that, I'm screwed. And the government people who are supposed to do it aren't doing it. And this is stuff that also needs to be explained. This is specifically why I'm at risk. This is why, my predators have been allowed to slander me in court. And the thing is that I tried to turn in these police officers before they slandered me in court. That shows motive.
Mm-hmm.
Their motive for slandering me was that I was trying to turn them in, and their motive for the situation in specific with Natalie Bollinger, with those officers, which is what started this all, because, like I said, that stuff is used against me everywhere I go. No matter what state I go to, that crap in Colorado is used against me. And then I have a record that exists that shouldn't exist. My arrest record is primarily stuff that they had to drop the charges on, but I have my arrest record. It does show that I have never, ever been charged with any form of child abuse, ever. It also shows that I was continually charged with failure to appear, but in all of those cases, I was prevented from going to court, either by incarceration or by just not being notified. There's also the situation where I was supposed to be allowed to have my pretrial whatever within 65 days of being arrested, or they had to let me go. Well, it ended up being 68 days, and it ended up being actually like 72 or 73 days overall because I was held in Boulder to prevent me from being in Arapahoe County to be at
And
the
then you
court
still
date.
didn't have my pretrial.
So, I mean, literally, I'm being harmed and being illegally held in multiple locations over a history that isn't my fault, isn't my choice, and is illegal. You can't charge somebody with failure to appear if they're incarcerated. And then, of course, like I said with the vacation thing, they have a specific amount of time to turn this stuff in, but instead they go on vacation. My public pretenders kept on going on vacation during stuff like that, and then I'm like, I didn't make this choice.
I'm glad she didn't
Then my
interrupt
other
me
public
at this
pretenders
point to tell me
here,
about all that
same thing.
happening to
They
her
don't
because
care
she's
about the
already done
abuse.
that.
They don't care about the Natalie Bollinger thing. And if it hadn't been for Deputy Taylor, they wouldn't have acknowledged that. Now, then there's the part where I'm not schizophrenic or delusional. And Deputy Taylor...
Actually, you're a very visual person based on what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
No, you're not schizophrenic or delusional. You have a hard time processing what people are saying to you, but when it comes to visual...
When I haven't slept in 2 days, that's the part that I did at the very end of it. Like, I was so tired, I could barely function. I literally couldn't function.
Yeah, no, see, everything I'm seeing is like, what you saw, like, you are a genius.
So we did the visual part at the beginning. Leslie Carter was there for almost 8 hours. Plus, it took her about an hour to drive there and an hour to drive home. So for Dr. Leslie Carter, it was a full 10-hour day. I hadn't slept in 2 days because of the screamers who were in the cells next to me. And I had this appointment with Leslie Carter, and at the very beginning of the test, for about the first hour or two, I did pretty good. As we went further along, I got steadily more and more and more exhausted, and it got to the point where, like I'd explained to Claire already, I had told her that when I took this test that I was tired, that I'd gone 2 days without sleep, and that part of it I didn't get good scores. It was at the very end of the test because we'd been at it for 8 hours. But here she's going to point that out, and she does that like 5 or 6 times, and I have to re-explain it to her so many times. And then when I'm talking to Brandon, it's a situation where she missed it again.
As far as what you see, and you get confused about how people talk to you.
But I don't.
And that's the thing. I literally just explained to her that it was at the very end of the test and I was half asleep. I literally had just told her that, not 5 seconds earlier, if that.
When I haven't slept in that long, that's when I have that issue. And one of the other issues, like I said,
that's the fourth time that I've explained that part in specific to her. And I understand she's got the flu and she's having problems sleeping, but this is going to be a recurring issue because she's going to have this very same issue while I'm talking to Brandon.
That was at the very end of it. She was here in Tillamook for like 7.5 hours meeting with me. So it was a really, really long meeting. And the thing is, if you looked at my test from when I was a little kid, it was completely the opposite. It all said that I was, I had an 8th grade spelling level and a college reading level at the age of 6. That my reading comprehension and my language comprehension was, at the very, very top, 99th percentile on both of them. And this stuff says just the opposite. But like I said, when she did that last part, when she did all of the
But you have the 99th in perceptual reasoning.
Yeah, but she did that part first. I was still able to.
So there was a grand total of. Shit, I got that piece of paper over here, right here. I can tell you how many tests we took because there was a whole battery of tests. 8 of them. The first one was all right, Says examination procedures. Mr. Schwartz was seen for this evaluation at the Tillamook County Jail in Tillamook, Oregon on 5/29/2025. My total contact time with Mr. Schwartz was about 7.5 hours. The neuropsychological evaluation included 1. Diagnostic interview and testing with Mr. Schwartz. Number 2. Mental status exam. Number 3. Welshire Adult Intelligence Scale. 4. WAIS-IV. 4. The Wechsler Memory Scale. 4. Number 5. The California Verbal Learning Test. Number 6. The Neuropsychological Assessment Battery Executive Function Subtests. Number 7. Wechsler Individual Achievement Test. And then 8. Ritvo Autism Asperger's Diagnostic Scale. So the thing that she's not connecting in her mind through any of this stuff that I'm telling her is that this stuff right here, along with the other evidence from TFCC, shows that TFCC lied knowingly, willingly, and intelligently. They knew exactly what they were doing. That's the point of saving the evidence. One piece of evidence alone doesn't really show you much, but you get a few pieces and they fit together like perfect little jigsaw puzzles. Well, that's important. When what TFCC keeps on repeating is an obvious lie at this point, it's not a mistake. Once you're aware of it and you try to cover it up, it's not a mistake. At that point, it is a felony. So, with all of those different tests on there, all done in a 7.5 hour period, we did 8 tests, and some of them are pretty hefty tests. And with me not getting any sleep, obviously there was issues with the very end of it when we were doing basically just verbal stuff. Like, I'm at that place in between awake and asleep at that point. I realize she's talking and I realize I'm responding, but at that point, that's about it.
Somewhat keep myself conscious at that point.
Yeah.
So
well, you can't help it if you're starving to death and sleep deprived and stressed out.
So there, she basically is acknowledging that she finally gets it, and it'd be nice if it stayed that way, but it didn't. She forgot soon after, and we'll get to that on the next video as well.
Autistic, and you're melting down, and you're like, the best I can do is I'm watching, and I see everything, and I'm gonna remember. That's what all these testing schools read as.
Exactly, and it also, one of the things on that though is that when I'm stressed, the first things I forget are names and numbers. Also, if I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, especially serious.
Now, that's an important detail to remember, and there's a connecting point to it afterwards, kind of like with the paperwork. Those two pieces of evidence by themselves mean absolutely nothing, but you put them both together, and somebody's fucking lying. You know, obviously, this is a situation as well where it's basically just like those very same two puzzle pieces.
Numbers, yeah.
Yep. Okay, now, if I'm overwhelmed,
just because you can't quote pi to like 20 digits doesn't mean you're stupid.
So that's unnecessary. I don't mean it as in that's an insult towards me that I feel was an unnecessary insult, because it wasn't meant as an insult. It's just unnecessarily filling up the time. This is time that we really need to focus on power pounding all the stuff that she hasn't had the time to learn and doesn't remember because, you know, she'd not kept her word so many times that there's a lot of stuff that piled up, and a lot of the stuff that she could have learned about the situation, she didn't because she didn't make the time. Now, like I was saying before, if you turn it in to begin with, it's very easy. It's once you've got 30 or 40 people involved and nobody's doing anything, it becomes very complicated. because then you have to remember who you met and when you met them and what they said and when they said it. And of course, recording it makes that a lot easier, doesn't it? So here she's going to go off on a lot of tangents, and I have to try to pull us back on course, because if I don't, she's going to keep on talking.
You know,
What I'm saying is that when I'm overwhelmed, people take advantage of it. I can't function when I'm overwhelmed, so they make sure that I'm overwhelmed, and then they're literally going out of their way to make sure I have a meltdown, and that's literally what they're doing. If they know enough to push you into having a mental breakdown, which is what a meltdown is, it's a mental breakdown. We need to stop calling them meltdowns, because then people associate a meltdown with retarded people who fucking shit themselves and in the corner, and that's literally what they see in their heads. And I've been around a lot of people who were like that in my life, and I've protected people like that my whole life, but that's what people see when they hear certain words, and it has a visual cue to them as well.
So when you're overwhelmed and sleep deprived because you've been pushed to the limit, and you're cold and tired and hungry and all these things,
I can't function.
Suddenly they're like, "Oh well, you're retarded." No, you're not.
Well,
not
what I'm saying is that they keep pretending like I'm acting out for no reason. Like I'm just acting
not.
like a bad child. I know, but the thing of me explaining this, I don't need you to tell me that I'm not. I know that I'm not. You know that I'm not. The point is, with
At this point, obviously, this is where I had to try to put my foot down and explain that this is not being fruitful and it's not being productive. Um, we're used to people telling us those sweet nothings and useless shit, but it doesn't help. It makes it more difficult for me to speak. It makes it more difficult for me to stay on topic when you're changing the topic. When you have a bunch of questions before I've been able to finish my story, it makes it difficult. And then you get to see that as far as we are into the video, like I've been interrupted enough times that I'm having a lot of difficulties communicating. You also get to hear my stuttering, which is always cute.
the story is that it is heard in its entirety. And there's a lot of dots that need to be connected. Thank goodness I've connected them all already, but there are just so many of them. Now, when I get to the part, almost, inevitably, when I tell somebody about the disabilities thing or the schizophrenic thing, they'll interrupt and say you're not, or they'll tell me about their cousin who's schizophrenic, and I'm definitely not like that. And that just eats up the ability to, at that point, when I get back to the part that I was at and try to connect the dots, we've already filled it up with enough ear stuff that we're not able to make that connection the way that it needs to be made as a solid connection of understanding. So when
I'm
I
not
say
talking about me right now, I'm talking about you.
That wasn't specifically targeted at her. That was obviously one of those yous, as in, well, people.
Like, for example, when I'm overwhelmed.
Duress, pardon me, but I'm going to interrupt you, okay? This looks like you at your very, very worst.
I still got really good scores.
From what you've told me, I doubt that the average American could score this high, after watching a family member get shot in the face. But it's like, okay, well, I have the same problem, a little bit about me. I get stressed out, I can't remember, series of numbers. Not gonna happen. That's not how you think. Everything that I'm looking at right now shows that you are a visual learner.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I'm trying to explain the abuse that I'm going through in specific.
Right.
So I'm not just a visual learner. Under the circumstances I'm in, I need somebody to show me how to do a lot of this stuff, because I'm stressed out. If I wasn't stressed out, I could learn how to do a lot of stuff just from reading a book. Most people can't do that.
That's what I'm trying to focus on, and I'm still trying to bring it back to that.
Okay, sorry.
The abuse that I'm enduring, for example, when I get overwhelmed with the numbers and the names, most people who go
And she does start saying sorry so much that I have to say something about that too.
through this, it's one assault, two assaults, or it's somebody who's in a relationship and it's a specific type of repeated assaults. For me, it's not that. It's completely different from what people standardize as abuse. I stopped going to my friends and family because they kept on taking advantage of me. They wanted me to bring cigarettes. They wanted me to bring pot. They wanted me to bring things to them for them
Or
to take time to
babysit their
help.
kids.
Trade. Everything's a trade.
Right, and then they don't keep their word,
Yeah.
or they say it's out of the goodness of their heart, and then once they're in control of your property, which in my case is evidence, then that's when they become a controlling asshole. Now, when I get overwhelmed with the names and the numbers, it's not that I'm trying to withhold information or keep it from people. It's that the more they talk over me, the more scatterbrained the situation becomes, because they keep on derailing the train, and I have to keep on trying to bring it back to where I was, and then they go, "You're just talking in circles." We are.
I'm trying to present this as a lesson. I do understand that, yes, she keeps doing it, so it can and probably does come across as directly bitching directly at her, but that's not the situation. The situation is that I have to turn in the abuse that I'm enduring and also the circumstances. If people aren't understanding, and they have their assumptions that they're going to roll with, or they keep getting stuck on their own thing, it's obviously super stressful. It's also stressful for the other person. And the faster that I talk, the more agitated they get, the more stuff that they miss. But this is what's happening because the more they interrupt me, the more afraid I am that I'm not going to be able to connect the dots for them the way that they need to be connected. I mean, the evidence is pretty simple. Most of these people, if they just look at the evidence, they don't even need me to tell them what went on. They can see it with their own two eyes if they're analytical. But there's always some reason you can't see the evidence. It's the evidence that I sent her. I also sent to the villain's crime in the same exact email, and they were able to see this stuff. So if they can see it, she can see it. They might be doing it on a computer where she's doing it on a phone where she'd have to probably zoom in a little bit, but
Already covered that. No, we didn't cover it. We got part of the way through it, and then you interrupted me again, and I had to start over. And it's not a situation where I want to start over from the beginning. It's a situation where if they're interrupting with every single connecting dot that needs to be connected, and they want to interrupt every single time to play devil's advocate, they're literally not listening to what I'm telling them. Also, if they're continually telling me about their story and saying, "Well, I'm trying to let you know that I understand." Well, the way that people understand is by listening to the story, and it's kind of like watching a movie. If you watch a movie, then you can kind of get it. Maybe it's the first time you've seen Star Wars, so it makes no sense to you. But if you ask questions through the entire movie, you're going to miss the whole movie. You're also not going to get your questions asked. It's all going to make absolutely no sense because you're not paying attention to the movie. So one of the situations that I keep having to deal with is people want to interrupt partway through the movie, basically, and then start asking a bunch of questions about stuff that happens later on or stuff that happens in the past. And I don't get to actually establish the timeline because they're asking questions that are all over the place. At one point in time, like if you ask if I threatened anybody, I can honestly say that for most of it, I didn't. There were only 2 occasions where I actually threatened somebody's life. Both of those were to get a date in court. One of them was President Trump, and that was because I was trying to get the FBI involved so they would take my evidence and realize I was telling the truth. And the other one was Ted Bollinger, and this was over a situation where he created a situation that was unsafe for me and his daughter. So when I get overwhelmed, for me, it's not a situation where it's just one person or one situation or one set of situations with just one or two abusers. It's a situation where I'm taking all of these different types of abuse everywhere that I go. So when people hear that, they go, "Oh, well, you think everybody's out to get you. You're paranoid and delusional." With you, you've gotten to see the evidence that it is everywhere that I go, that it is over stuff that's untrue. But then there's, like I said, the overwhelmed part, the part where they start talking over me, and it's something really important.
Don't smoke pipe tobacco out of a pipe. I got rolling papers. I was just being lazy. And now I'm coughing through my video.
And oftentimes I have to raise my voice at that point, because one of the things that they'll do the most is they'll say my name over and over and over again, raising their voice as if I didn't hear them the first time. No, I did hear the first time. I just needed to finish what I was saying.
I'm going to give you an example of that right now because I'm going to have to post this one up whenever I'm able to get to it. The video with, there's another conversation with Mary Miller, and during that conversation, or call, I should say, because Mary Miller did listen extremely well, or at least she was quiet while I was talking. But at one point, she wanted to interrupt me and say my name a few times in a row over what I had just told them was that TFCC was trying to claim that I was delusional and pretending I was delusional. And that's the point where she decided that she wanted to interrupt me. But the important part to that, the two connecting dots there, is that the psychological evaluations that I have and multiple pieces of paper from people I was actually able to show evidence to and actually have the qualifications to diagnose schizophrenia, they all say I'm not schizophrenic. But since she was trying to interrupt me, I had to snap at the lady so that I could finish what I was saying. Because that part explaining that I've got paperwork that shows I'm not schizophrenic, that is very important, especially after explaining that TFCC, the quote unquote mental health place here in Tillamook, is trying to pretend I'm delusional. At that point, I have to make sure that I finish what I'm saying because I can't leave it hanging with that part alone. I have to bring up the fact that psychological evaluators from the state very clearly that I am not schizophrenic or delusional. So that right there is one example of a situation where the two dots needed to be connected and somebody insisted that that needed to be the very moment that they were going to say my name over and over and over again to get my attention, to try to talk over me, to say something and ask some questions. Now, after I was able to make the statement I needed to, I was fine with her asking questions.
So, with me being overwhelmed like that, over one situation, and then you consider the fact that it's multiple situations of civilians who saw something on the news assaulting me, and then there's people attacking my Facebook. They're trying to get my Facebook taken down. They're claiming that evidence of people threatening my life is me threatening people's lives, which you also got to see that they did that with the TFCC thing here. So
Yeah, where I was told that I needed to send the evidence to the TFCC investigator. So I sent actual screenshots of the threats against my life. And the very first screenshot actually has the name Sean in it, although the person typed SEAN instead of SHAWN. But regardless, it's pretty obvious that they were threats towards me, threats towards my sister and my niece. Not threats towards Kylie, her name wasn't in it at all. These people weren't threatening Kylie, they were threatening me. And Kylie pretended that I threatened her. And that is a pretty common theme. Now, the messages show otherwise. The messages show that I followed instructions, I sent the evidence, I typed what people were saying to me, or sent recordings of them saying those things to me, or I sent screenshots of them typing those things to me.
With me trying to turn in my predators and I'm being forced to turn them into themselves and their own agencies, I'm also being forced to move repeatedly. And, everywhere that I go, I'm treated the same by police. I'm treated like I'm less than human. And the abuse continues. And then, of course, the agencies that they sent me to continue to try to pull this crap. And then, of course, when they send me around in circles, they're overwhelming me further. At that point, I'm worried about where I'm going to get the food to eat because I'm spending money on gas to go to these places. Then after they destroyed my vehicle, I have no vehicle. I have to depend on somebody else to give me rides, and they might not feel like it. They might be too depressed to give me a ride, even if they tell me they're going to. The people who are telling me they might give me a ride, they might not ever give me a ride. So this is a situation where I'm not going to take somebody's, well, I might be able to, because, for example, when your daughter tells you that she has been abused, and I'm saying, metaphorically or whatever, not literally your situation, but if your daughter tells you that she is being abused, you turn it in right away with your daughter.
That's what I did yesterday. That's why it was hard.
Right. So obviously that gets something started immediately. With me, I have to beg.
So you get to hear her there. I don't know why I tried smoking off a tobacco pipe while I'm rolling a cigarette. Probably because I'm an idiot. So here she's talking about how, yes, she absolutely does know how to turn it in. She knows exactly how to turn it in right away. Also, she knew that this was being recorded. She assumes that all of our conversations are recorded. And she also assumes that they're all going to go up on YouTube or Facebook, if not now, eventually, if we're not heard. So she knows the tune. Where she made mistakes, at least she was willing to listen to it and try to understand it, even if she forgot it after 10 seconds. I probably shouldn't laugh about that, but I kind of have to. I mean, things like that screw me over, and I gotta try to.
People over and over and over again, please take it seriously. And then by the time they do take it seriously, there's always the, oh, well, my credibility. And then the thing is that none of my predators are credible. None of them. Yeah. Ted Bollinger is, between you and Ted Bollinger, he makes you look like a friggin' Girl Scout. And really, you primarily are. I'm not trying to say you're a goody two shoes, but I do know what it takes to get somebody who's autistic with a good moral grounding to do things that they find immoral just out of necessity, and that takes fucking with our families. Don't fuck with our families.
Yeah.
So the other thing is the suicidal ideation. Yes, I want my life to end. My life fucking sucks. I don't get to see any of my friends. I can't show you none of this shit in person. You're not here. I don't get to see any of my friends in Colorado. Most of them are dead now.
Yeah.
So I'm.
But you by these test scores, you have an IQ of 130. So you're not an idiot. You get overwhelmed.
Okay, so this is something that her and I have gone over at least a dozen times. Because every time that I tell her about my IQ on this test, and I explain to her that the IQ on this test is only up to 140. 140 is the maximum that you can get on the test that Dr. Leslie Carter gave me. Whereas when I was younger, the test for the IQ that they had went up to 200. So obviously there's a sliding scale there, so to speak. And when Claire did hers, they were still doing the old type, which is up to 200 scale. But the thing is, I always have to re-explain this to her. And this is the first time that she's been able to see it. And the part that she's fixated on is the numbers. She's fixated on that because it's the part that she could see, apparently. And yes, it shows that I am highly intelligent. But also the IQ of 130, that's 130 out of 140, not 130 out of 200. And this is, I don't know how many times I've explained it to her, but I'm about to explain it to her again.
It's 130 out of a total of 140 possible too, which says something as well. And that's even factoring in the super low scores.
Yeah. No, the low ones are just look like overwhelmed to me. You know, digits.
I was
stand,
barely
okay.
able to keep my eyes open at that point. It wasn't that I was overwhelmed. I was, you know how you get to that point in between being awake and asleep and somebody is talking to you and you know you said something or you know they said something to you, but it really doesn't register what they said or what you answered. So that at the end of it, about the last 2 hours of it, that's where I was mentally.
Okay, that makes sense. That tracks. Yeah.
And then also during that 2 hours,
if I said to you,
So by that point, I've explained it 7 times to her. So we'll hope that she retains it with me saying it 7 times, except when you hear the next recording, the one with Brandon, you'll realize even 7 times wasn't enough. She didn't retain it. Now, a lot of it is probably due to illness, but not necessarily, because there have been times when she wasn't ill and she still forgets all of this stuff. This is only the 7th time in this video. So, 7 times in one video, and then she's going to forget it by the next video. That's pretty significant for stuff that I told her way more than 7 times before this video.
right now, you know, in 5 minutes, I want you to tell me 4765371.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
Exactly. Would I be able to do it? Probably not.
But when it came to the words, I did extremely well, and when it came to the numbers, I did pretty decent. It's the parts where you had to actually think at the very end, like I wasn't capable of thinking. And then when the detective came in, he was there for about 30 to 45 minutes during the test, being super loud. And in the jail, the divider between the 2 rooms is cardboard.
Oh, it's even worse.
Yeah, so there was nothing I could do. When I say that they've made sure that I'm overwhelmed in every single situation, I mean it.
That's the too loud thing. When she interrupted to say it's even worse, that's an autistic thing. That's something that she was able to identify immediately. Yeah, when there's a detective being loud in the room next door and I'm having to do a comprehension test, I can't hear the person who's giving the test and the detective at the same time. I won't register what either one of them are saying, except for the little bits and pieces in between when one of them is still talking and the other one's taking a breath. It's extremely complicated. So, at least what she had to add there helps to add to the understanding of the situation.
Also, everybody who in one of these professional situations tried to help me or looked anything up, they fired them. TFCC fired a woman named Shay Darnell. Shay Darnell was going to try to help turn this stuff in. They fired her, and then she started working for CARE. At CARE, she was possibly going to help turn it in if the peer support workers were going to work with her, but they never asked her.
And then
I know because I kept asking her. And she was willing to help me to turn it in with Russell. And then she was fired. And that was only a month ago or so. A month and a half ago now. There's also, I'm not sure if Deputy Taylor still has his job, but the Natalie Bollinger thing, you can see it was a big case. Like murder on the 21st was 6 years after her death.
Hard to watch. That was so hard to watch.
So the point is that Deputy Taylor works at the jail, and he knew who I was from True Crime. Same thing with Deputy David Fenwald. And Esmeralda Palominos, who goes by Mary Palominos, also looked up Natalie Bollinger while I was in the jail. The other two, Fenwald remembered it from when he was in high school. So that point needed to be made because of how soon, these deputies were aware that the narrative being sold was not the truth. How soon were they aware that Natalie Bollinger was not a delusion? This is important in all of these situations. When did they know that Natalie Bollinger was not a delusion? And when did they stop pretending that she was a delusion?
Holy shit.
Well, that was 6 years after her death. The stuff from Mike Boudet is even worse. But there's
And you
so
can
much
tell-
evidence.
Because I know you, and I'm sorry.
And you can tell we're going way off topic here, and she's going to start. This is about the part where she starts doing the I'm going to interrupt you more frequently.
Sorry for interrupting you, but I know you.
Yes, ma'am. And Natalie knew me too.
Test scores, and it all makes sense. Like, what you see
Is
like,
what's
that's
there.
where you're a genius.
If I see it, it's fucking there.
It's fucking there. It
Yeah.
fucking happened.
Like,
Just
that
'cause
was
you
sleep
can't
deprived.
recite some list of like 8 words, in sequence.
Well,
Or a set of numbers doesn't mean you're stupid.
All right, so there she's again not getting the fact that I was half asleep at the end of it. This is the 8th time I've explained this to her because she's still stuck on the part where at the very end of it I was half asleep when we were doing the word association. When we were doing that part, I was too tired to comprehend the words because I was tired. Because I was tired, 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 because I was tired. That's 8 times saying that I was tired. When she did the words list, I did great on that. I got like a 96 on that part, which is that's 96th percentile. That means that if there's 100 people in a room, I was smarter than 95 of them. I don't know. Numbers, when I'm stressed, are obviously an issue. Names are not generally an issue unless I just learned your name, or unless you won't tell your name, or unless I'm having to remember 10 different people that I met in one day. And then I have 10 more people I meet the next day, and 10 more the next day. Basically, I'm flooded with a bunch of people that want my attention at that point, and I'm just overwhelmed.
Let me give you 2 scenarios to explain the overwhelmed. You have to remember where you've been and who your predator is, but it's primarily just one predator. So you only have to remember that one predator's name. I have to remember literally thousands of predators' names and how they connect with my other predators, why it is that they didn't do their job. And in all these cases, they didn't do their job because they didn't think they had to, because I went in alone. So what we're going to be...
So we're talking about 2 different sets of predators on that. There's the law enforcement predators, the ones who show their bias and pretend that every homeless person is a drug addict who's schizophrenic. They want to send us to drug treatment and what's the other one? Therapy. Like, drug treatment and therapy aren't going to help somebody who's not on drugs. And when their situation is abuse, if that therapist is going to turn in the abuse with you, then sure. But if that's not what they're going to do, they're useless.
Doing today, we're going to call up some media places that probably won't answer, and I'll let you leave the messages if you feel comfortable doing that. But I'll at least let them know when we call, if we hit an answering machine, that you're on the phone with me, and we can both leave our contact information. And because we're leaving our contact information, if I put it up on YouTube, I have to go through and find a way to edit it, which I don't know how to do. So that does leave us with, evidence that we can't post up on the internet, but that's just because there's personal information in it. And the reason I'm bringing this up now before we do this is because that's a lot of what I've had to deal with in the past is the same exact thing, the personal information stuff.
Now, obviously, lots of communication issues. We got train collisions going on. Basically, I've been interrupted enough by this point that stuttering is a very serious issue. Also, by this point, I've been interrupted enough to take it off topic or change the topic that I'm getting frustrated. There's also the fact that she keeps going back to something that I've explained at this point 8 times already. And I gotta try to get her to understand that, you know, instead of filling in details at this point, it still just sounds like generalization. At this point in the call, I should be still calm and I should still be giving important connecting dots, whereas it's become increasingly difficult. And it started off with her listening pretty well, or it seemed to be a situation where she was listening well, but she's not obviously retaining any of it.
Can't release most of the stuff with Penny Cooper, who was supposed to be my caseworker in Nebraska. I can't release it because she was supposed to be the caseworker part of it, and Marcia Estrada was the therapy part of it. You got to read, Marcia Estrada has stated outright, I am not schizophrenic or delusional, but we didn't have to exchange phone numbers.
Right now, and I understand this stuff.
Right, but what I'm saying is that we didn't have to exchange phone numbers during those.
So there, I knew that she was speaking, but it didn't register to me what she was saying, because at that point I had to really try hard to hold in my head what it is that I was saying instead of going off on another one of her, what do they call them? Not fairy dances, that's a term in Boulder. When you get all la la in the head, ADOS, that's the same exact expression. It means the same thing. Attention deficit o squirrel, you're thinking off in la la land.
Meetings, so I was able to post those meetings up on YouTube. Whereas the ones with Penny Cooper, I had to repeatedly tell her my social security number and my phone number and other people's contact phone numbers and information, and she blew it all off and had a shitty attitude with me the whole time, and that's what I needed to post on the internet to show how horribly I was treated, but I couldn't because I couldn't edit out phone numbers.
Yeah, Marcia Estrada was
like I
nice.
said, I don't have the help doing that. If somebody shows me how to do it, that's visual learning. That's how I have to learn when I'm in a state of
I can
duress.
See your test scores right here.
Yep.
Like you have to see it to understand it.
But only when I'm in a state of crisis, and I'm only in a state of crisis because I'm overwhelmed. It's like, you having to turn in your ex versus me having to turn in a bunch of people who coordinatedly poked me with a fucking stick until I reacted and said, look, see, he's dangerous. Or I had to turn in people who assaulted me. Literally, I had to turn in Sheriff Scott DaCosta, who assaulted me. And he assaulted me for trying to turn him in. So when he assaulted me, I had to turn him in for the previous crap, which is covering up the errors of his deputies both before and after Natalie's death, and the fact that they were also involved in covering it up. The fact that he was running around telling people in Chapel, Nebraska I was schizophrenic. Like, this is what I was trying to turn in. I was afraid that he was priming something so that the people at Chapel, Nebraska would allow him to harm me and believe that anything that I said was a lie. And that's what cops have done everywhere because of Waylon Molotai assaulting me. I got to show you that. That's on my arrest record, which means anytime a police officer looks my name up, he sees assault against a police officer on my arrest record. It doesn't matter if the charges were dropped, and it doesn't say on there that it's Officer Waylon Molotai, who lost his job in Denver for assaulting inmates in jail and then lost his job in Boulder for repeatedly assaulting people.
Yeah.
So it's 9:54. I guess we got about 6 minutes to try to get everything else told that we can before we get started making phone calls. But like I was saying, the most important thing here is explaining to these people that, you know, my life has been at risk. These people have been threatening my friends and family, and that you're able to verify the evidence. It has been sent to you, so you can show it to people. Another thing is, in the stuff from TFCC, when I'm able to send you all of that, you'll get to see that in all of my psychological evaluations, those doctors made part of their assessments based on the previous doctors, which is history, and part of their assessment based on what TFCC has to say, which is also the history thing. But the problem there is that TFCC wants to keep on pushing the delusional thing, and even though basically what the evaluators had to say in all those situations is that TFCC was completely wrong, TFCC won't change their paperwork or accept those documents. They won't accept my psychological evaluations because that doesn't fit with their cover-up.
They didn't accept mine, so I can verify that.
And these are even in Oregon. At first, they were telling me they couldn't accept it because it wasn't in Oregon. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I get a disability check because I'm disabled. Whether I'm in Oregon, whether I'm in California, whether I'm in Washington State or fucking Alaska, it doesn't matter. I'm still disabled. You have a job to do. You have to do your job. And you can verify not only they didn't do their jobs for you, but I've sent you evidence they didn't do their jobs for me. Instead, they pretended Natalie was a delusion. Now, when I send you the rest of it.
So the only reason I bring up my stuff is because I'm saying, yeah, I get it. It happened to me too.
Yes, ma'am. And they absolutely did. So
now the problem is she says that in almost every one of our conversations. Now this right here isn't supposed to be one of our conversations. It's supposed to be me explaining to her who we're going to call and what each of them does, because some of the stuff we got to turn in is to one agency, some of it's to another, a lot of it needs to be sent to the media. They basically believe whatever they were told, but the evidence shows that what they were told is bullshit. And you've gotten to see that time and again.
the thing is, you know, with where was I at on that?
Oh shoot, I'm sorry. Whether you're in whatever state, you still get a disability check, so you're still a protected person.
Exactly. And the one thing that I wanted to read, you notice the stuff, you'll probably have to scroll up quite a bit, but it says abuse and neglect. There's like
Now that part, I was glad that she answered and she got close to the right answer, but then she forgets it. It happens.
pieces of paper together.
Yeah, that one was really hard to read, but run it down for me.
All right, so on the first page, and this isn't the important one, it says in big bold letters, abuse and neglect. Please continue to follow up with local resources, Tides of Change, CARE, Helping Hands, or local sites that may be able to provide advocates. More importantly...
So they're referring you back to your abusers.
Yes.
To help. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And by this time, I'd
So
already...
yeah, she made the connection there, which is good, and she makes that connection every time. But then we don't end up going anywhere and making any calls. Now, I do want to say that Claire is trying, but obviously, with her situation, it creates a lot of issues. It's also an important part of my situation, though, too, because, well, if people aren't coming forward because they were lied to by police officers, that doesn't mean they didn't come forward. It means they tried to come forward. That means they tried and were denied. Like, instead of the police taking a witness statement, it's a witness who's telling the truth about a situation that they don't want to hear about because they don't like a person. So they say, well, you can't make a report for somebody else. They're not making a report for somebody else. They're a witness. This is why disabled people need actual assistance. This is why we need these agencies to take this abuse seriously. But how can we do that if we never get around to making the calls? If it always becomes a situation where, well, you see how far along we are in this.
Tried to turn in all those places. It also says, more importantly, I will send a referral to TFCC for counseling as well as for advocacy. Well, I never got advocacy, and all the counseling they wanted to do was to treat me like I was schizophrenic and delusional and literally talk down to me like I was a dog in this tone.
Oh, I hate that. Oh my gosh, do I hate that. And for autistic people, that's really hard. When then suddenly they're like, what are you doing? And you're like, whoa, 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 what'd I do?
You know how I can tell you're lying to me? Because you're not looking me in the eyes. Like,
no, that's autistic. I'm sorry. I'm not looking you in the eyes. I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm thinking.
That's the thing about having you make the calls with me is
she's aware of autism. Now, in a lot of the things that I've had to say, I also said in the video, you might have noticed, it's because I do remember most of what was said. I remember the majority of the things that happen in these situations. I just don't remember the exact time and day that they happened. That's why I write it down or make a recording of it. Then at least it's documented. Now they say to write it down in a notepad, but that's not good enough. Because when you're a disabled and homeless male, they expect you to have everything lined up, cut and dry. And you have to still have somebody go in with you with that evidence. And I get somebody who promises to help, and I invest all the time in sending them the evidence, and then it ends up a situation where, like Claire, for example, was apologizing because she was going to help me years ago, and she didn't keep her word.
You know, when they try to do this immoral shit, you know, somebody who's aware of autism can help. That's why there was supposed to be an autism advocate when I first got disability. And
or like my daughter, where, you know, we had in her IEP, and not to make it about me, but this relates to you, is that we had to put it in her school records that if she feels overwhelmed, she's allowed to wear sunglasses. So even in class,
in the 80s, we had to struggle.
So that she feels like she doesn't have to make eye contact, so she can actually function.
I just had to sit there in class with a headache.
Yeah.
You probably grew up old enough to remember them
same
lights.
Thing. Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Oh, did I just mute it?
No.
Okay, because there's something on my phone and I always see.
All right, I'm going to pause it. We're at 52 minutes and 58 seconds worth of the recording. And I also wanted to let you know that there are a lot more to go through. This is just from the last 3 days or so. And there's more here, and 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 here. So, yeah, there's a lot. There's a whole lot.